if you want to be used by God, the first thing to do is to make yourself available to him. If you make yourself available to the Lord, he can do amazing things through you. He can do amazing things through you because he doesn't choose the elite. He doesn't choose the ones that we would choose. He chooses the people that he sees something in. Jesus consulted God before he chose these 12 disciples. And let's look at who he chose. Let's look at who he chose. A couple things I want you to notice about this list. First of all, a lot of times when people think about the 12 disciples, they think about Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. But Mark and Luke were not actually apostles. Okay, only John and Matthew were apostles. So that's just a common thing that people get confused on. Also note that John, this John, is John the Apostle. He's not John the Baptist. It's two different people. Okay, this is John the Apostle, John that wrote the book of John. But he and John the Baptist are two different people. Now, if you read through these lists in Matthew, Mark, and Luke, where they're listed, they're a little bit different. You'll notice that they're a little bit different. And some things are always the same. Simon Peter's always listed first. Judas Iscariot is always listed last. James and John are always listed together. They're brothers. Philip and Bartholomew are always listed together. Philip led Bartholomew to Jesus. Other than that, sometimes these in the middle get kind of mixed up because there's no specific order to the disciples. They don't have a criteria or a hierarchy. But some of the things that you will notice is that sometimes Bartholomew is called Nathaniel. And so it seems like there's a different guy there, but it's not. Bartholomew and Nathaniel are the same guy. Sometimes Matthew's called Levi. There's two Jameses. So this one is listed as son of Alphaeus, so we know which one he is. There's two Judases. So we have Judas, son of James. Sometimes he's listed that way. Sometimes he's listed as Thaddeus. I think after that whole Judas Iscariot fiasco, he would rather be called Thaddeus. But it's just, I went to high school with people that they went by their first name and now they're going by their middle name, and same person. And it's the same thing in biblical times. Sometimes we hear Peter called Simon Peter. Sometimes we hear him called Simon, but he's Peter. We know he's the same person. So the lists look a little bit different in those three, but it is all the same guys, okay? So that's the first thing that I want you to notice about those. But next, look at these guys. You think, what is so special about them? I don't see anything special about these guys that Jesus chose. There's several fishermen who are, hardworking, blue-collar guys that smell like fish. And Jesus is like, yeah, I want them. I want them on my team, And then you got James and John, the sons of thunder, is what he called them, because they were so hot-headed. They're very passionate, but they overreacted a lot. They're very hot-headed. If you remember, they were the ones that when they went through Samaria and the people didn't welcome Jesus very well, they were just like, oh, Lord, do you want me to just call down fire from heaven and kill them all? And Jesus is like, oh, sons of thunder, is they were just so hot-headed. And then we have Simon the Zealot. Zealots were people who they hated the Roman government. They despised the Roman government, and so they were constantly starting rebellions and riots, and they would carry knives around so that they could just sneak up on Roman soldiers and stab them in the back and kill them. Just brutal, harsh guys. Simon the Zealot, he's like, yeah, I want him on my team. Matthew was a tax collector. Tax collectors were hated. They were hated because they still are. Uh-oh. They were hated, though, because the way that they made their money back then, not now, but the way that they made their money back then was that they would overcharge. They would upcharge above the taxes. And the people would have to pay that money, and then they would pocket that money. So they made money off of the common people. They made themselves rich off the common people, and there's nothing that anybody could do about it because they had to pay it. They were required to pay it. And Matthew was a tax collector. Not only that, he was a Jew collecting taxes for the Roman government. Okay, so he was a traitor. They hated him. Jesus is like, yeah, Matthew, I want him him on my team. You know, and Nathaniel, when Nathaniel first heard about Jesus, he said, well, can anything good come out of Nazareth? I mean, he started out by insulting Jesus' whole family. And Jesus was like, yeah, I want him on my team. And then don't get me started on Judas Iscariot. I mean, my goodness. Last but not least, right? He was the worst. He betrayed Jesus. And Jesus, these are the 12 guys that Jesus chose. But the thing is, he knew them. He knew everything about them. He knew their flaws. He knew everything about them, and he chose them anyway. He chose them anyway. They're just a bunch of messed up people just like you and me. And he chooses us anyway too, doesn't he? He chose them anyway. And the thing is, he wasn't looking for the head of the class. He wasn't looking for the religious scholars. He wasn't looking for the elite people with the perfect resumes. He was looking for availability. Okay, these guys dropped everything. If you want to be used by God, the first thing to do is to make yourself available to him. If you make yourself available to the Lord, he can do amazing things through you. He can do amazing things through you because he doesn't choose the elite. He doesn't choose the ones that we would choose. He chooses the people that he sees something in. And that it was a calling. It wasn't calling just for these guys. It's a calling for us today. He's still calling us today to be his disciples, to step out in faith, to follow him, to step out of the comfort of the crowd and step into the calling of the kingdom. Because these guys weren't much different than you and me. You might be thinking, well, I'm not good enough. I'm not qualified. Neither were they. Neither were they. But God calls ordinary people to do extraordinary things. Look at what they did. They transformed the world. They transformed the world. And the same Holy Spirit that empowered them empowers us today. He lives in us. He's calling us to a higher level, to step out into discipleship. He sees you. He sees who you are, but not just that. He sees who you can be and who you will be. And he says, I can use that if you just make yourself available to him. He wants to call you to the next level, to join him in the ministry, to serve him with your life. And see, here's the thing. According to a recent study that I saw, it said that 69% of people, when asked if they're a Christian, would say yes, that they are a Christian. Which, I mean, 69%, that's not a bad number. You know, that's a fairly good number. I mean, I'd like it to be more, but it's a fairly good number. But I'd be curious to know how many of those 69%, if you were to reword that, if you were to ask, instead of saying, are you a Christian, say, are you a disciple of Jesus Christ? If they would answer that differently. You know, because I think that the meaning of Christian has kind of lost its significance in our society today. So many people would just call themselves Christian because they believe. But there's a difference between believing and following. You know, Satan and his demons believe. There's no transformation in that. The transforming power of the gospel is in choosing to follow God with your life. So I'd be curious to know how many people would actually consider themselves a disciple of Jesus Christ, because that seems like it takes on a whole other meaning, doesn't it? I mean, it's the same meaning as Christian. They both mean follower, right? But disciple just seems to have such a stronger meaning. So what does it mean? What does it mean to be a disciple of Jesus? And I know you're going, okay, well, here we go. Here's where she tells me to read my Bible and go to church and pray. And yes, I'm telling you to read your Bible and go to church and pray. Those things are important. They're very important. It's very hard to follow someone if you don't know them and you don't talk to them. So those things are very important. But beyond that, Jesus said that by this, everyone will know that you are my disciples if you love one another. If you love one another. And before you start thinking, oh, that's all I got to do? Well, that's easy. That's easy. I can love people. Wait, there's more. If you love those who love you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners love those who love them. And if you do good to those who are good to you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners do that. He's calling us to another level of loving people. That we should love everyone, even the difficult ones. Even the ones that get on your last nerve. That's how people will know that you're his disciples. Not by how loud you sing on Sunday morning. Not by how much money you put in the offering box. Not by how many memory verses you've memorized. Not by your title. By your love. That's how he will know that you're his disciple. Paul goes on to say in 1 Corinthians 13. My little button's not working. Oh. Thank you, Michael. That's why it wasn't working. Thank you, Sally. If I speak in the tongues of men or of angels, but do not have love, I am only a resounding gong or clanging cymbal. If I have the gift of prophecy and can fathom all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have faith that can move mountains, but do not have love, I am nothing. If I give all I possess to the poor and give over my body to hardship that I may boast, but do not have love, I gain nothing. The most important thing is love. Church, people should be able to look at us, to look at our church, to look at us, and they should see the love, and they should want to be a part of this. They should be drawn to Jesus by the love that we show. It's like I think about it, parents, grandparents. Have you ever sat and watched your children or your grandchildren interact with each other? And talk to each other and tell each other stories and laugh and talk. Doesn't that do your heart good? Doesn't that make your heart happy? I think it makes God's heart happy when he looks down on us on Sunday morning and he sees everybody out there in the gym drinking their coffee and eating their honey buns and talking and laughing and loving on each other. And when newcomers come in, welcoming them and loving on them. That makes his heart happy. We should be full of love everywhere we go. We should be spreading the love of Jesus, even when the line is long, even when the traffic is heavy, even when someone isn't nice to you. Because we all have those sandpaper people in our lives. I call them the sandpaper people, the ones that just rub you the wrong way. They just annoy you. We all have those people in our lives, but I think that sometimes God places those people in our lives to smooth out our rough edges, to shape us and mold us and make us more like him. He says that we're to love everyone. He says that we're to love everyone. So in closing today, I want to challenge you to do two things this week, okay? I want you to think about what it means to be a disciple, what that truly means, and think about where you can step it up, where you can take it up a level in your discipleship to Jesus Christ. And secondly, I want you to think about that person in your life that's hard to love. Because like I say, we all have someone. Think about who it is that is hard for you to love. And I want you to commit to praying that God will increase your love for them. And he will. He will. I know, because I've prayed this before. I prayed that God would increase my love for someone and increase their love for me. And he did it. He did it. And if he'll do it for me, he'll do it for you.